Welcome back, everybody. My name is Taylor Martin. This is the best Damn EDC, and today I want to talk to you about some knife brands you should know. Now, this is the third iteration of this series, and I got to talk to a lot of newer and upcoming knife brands at Blade Show. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening. Some stuff that I can't even talk to you about or show you yet, but it's just really cool, and I'm happy to see some of these newer takes on an old idea. I just really like that, or just tried and true, really solid stuff. But just because a knife company or brand is on this list doesn't necessarily mean that they're not well known, or that you haven't heard their name before. But I do feel like they're undervalued or underappreciated, and they don't get the recognition that they should. And it may also just be that people don't understand what that company is doing differently, what sets them apart. That's what this series is about. Why are these companies on this list? Because they're doing something cool and different. And it just really appeals to me, and I think it will appeal to you as well. So, with that said, here are 5 knife brands you should know and should consider the next time you go to buy a knife. And with that said, let's do the damn thing. So the very first brand is JHO, I believe is how it's pronounced, JHO Knives. I've been looking at them for a long time because a long time ago I did a video on utility knives, like 3 or 4 years ago now, and in that I included this craft knife. Well, JHO made a higher end version of that old school craft knife and put a high end blade in it instead of these disposable toss aside blades. He put a really nice like M390 blade in it, and it's really cool. The concept really behind JHO is to think boldly but design minimally, and I think that translates really well into the products that he makes. And both of these are two that just kind of jumped out at me. There are some great knives as well. There's one knife from him, I think it's the GS3. It ships with 2 different blades. They're different blade shapes. You can choose which one you want to carry. So if you like the knife on one blade, you can put that on there. If you want to mix it up, you can put a different blade on the same knife. I think it's a really cool concept. And this one jumped out at me as soon as I saw it. This is the number 22. And as you can tell, this is designed after a scalpel blade, a number 22 scalpel blade, but it's a front flipper titanium frame lock on bearings. I believe this blade steel is M390, and this handle, this knurling on this handle is one of the most tooly feeling things ever. And this choil is just so perfect on this thing. Now, I do have my qualms with this knife in particular. You're getting a very short cutting edge on a fairly large knife. It's not huge, but the cutting edge on this is very small for how big this knife is. I have knives that are a third of this size and have the same size blade length. So that's just kind of the nature of designing something after a scalpel, but every single thing about this knife is done really well. The action is great, the lockup is great, centering is great. There's no problems with the fit and finish of this knife at all, and I think, in fact, the fit and finish and the finishing and the styling of it is what's so great. But this particular blade is gonna have to appeal to you for you to even consider this knife in the first place. But I still think this is unique. Somebody's doing something different. That is what's so cool about this. And getting it in the hand, it feels like a freaking tool. It doesn't feel like a nice, fancy knife. It feels like something you grab out of a toolbox, and I love that. And it's really not a bad price either. What you're getting, this titanium front flipper frame lock on bearings with an M390 blade. I mean, that's a dime a dozen these days now, but you still see some of those knives go for $300 and beyond. This is a $230 knife. This is the Lynx in the black oxide coating. I believe this is M390. I don't see it anywhere, but I'm pretty sure I remember it from the packaging. It comes with this right here, which is just a little sheath for it. It's made out of paper, but it's good enough to keep this thing from cutting. But this is a credit card knife, right? It goes in your wallet. So for example, if you're carrying a wallet like this thing slides into the back of here, and you've got a knife in your wallet. Now, you're not gonna make it through security in places like that, but this blade, I'm not gonna be carrying this really. I think it's just a really cool piece of art for me, but it is very functional. This thing cuts really well. It's really great at slicing, or you know, a pull cut like that, but push cuts, slicing, all sorts of stuff can be done really, really well with this knife. And I think it's just really cool. This is definitely, as he calls it, the highest quality card knife you're gonna come across. That's very true. And it's really cool. It's just something that caught my eye, and I think it's neat. But JHO does so much more than just a card knife and this scalpel-esque front flipper. There are so many things, so many different knife models, but also a lot of really cool desk art, pocket art, just everything on that website I would not mind having in my collection. I'll just put it that way. It's all very cool and different. So please, I implore you, go check out JHO Knives. It'll be linked down below. All right, this one is probably no surprise to you guys. I've been talking about McNees a lot lately, and that is because I really should have bought this knife, the McNees Mac2 3.5. I should have bought this a long time ago, but I didn't until I came across it at Blade Show, and I said it in the video about my Blade Show haul. This is the most me knife out there. It really would be a toss-up between this and the Umnumzan. Again, like that JHO knife, this feels like a tool. It's a beast, it's a tank, it's made really well. Everything from McNees is made here in the USA, and these are from his performance machined line, which means that these are mid-tech knives. So these are not, you know, OEM'd by Riot or WeKnife or Best Tech. These are made in the USA. So whoever is the OEM making the parts, that is in the USA. Mid-tech, as I explained, is kind of somewhere in between full custom and full production. It's a gray area in the middle, and that's what these are, but everything about them is made in the USA. So we'll start with this one again. This is the Mac2 3.5. There is a 3-inch version of this knife as well. They are basically the exact same thing, just one is scaled up or the other is scaled down, however you want to look at that. The 3.5 I think is probably the perfect size for me. I wouldn't want this thing much smaller, honestly. Built like a tank, and it fits in the hand like a glove. It deploys so fast. You can deploy it really, honestly, as fast as the auto. I mean, this thing is just a laser beam, and the action on it is perfect. I've cut my finger with it so many times because this is a finger guillotine. The action on this knife is as good as any knife I've handled. Just superb, absolutely superb. And these are on bearings, if that's important to you. That's really the only complaint I have. I wish that there was a phosphor bronze washer version of this knife. I wouldn't mind maybe even trying to convert it myself. And then the clip, it's not really a complaint to me, but the clip could be better. It's not that interesting. It's a flat piece of titanium that's been bent. I'd rather it have a milled clip or something that just has a little more something to it. That's really the only shortcoming. Honestly, I wouldn't consider the bearings a shortcoming. It's a preference. The clip, a shortcoming, in my personal opinion. But I think otherwise this thing is damn near perfection. And I'll say the same thing about the AutoMac. I'm not typically a fan of autos. There are maybe 2 or 3 automatic knives that I've come across that I've been a huge fan of. This is one of them. One of the only other ones is the ATCF from ProTech, the Terzula. This one is right there with it. Just fantastic. It's basically the exact same knife as the auto or the Mac2 3.5. It is slightly smaller. So it's not quite the 3-inch, it's not quite the 3.5. And it does have slightly narrower blade, if you see. This one has just a slightly wider blade than the AutoMac, but otherwise they're pretty much the same damn thing. So pricing on these, since they are mid-tech, is gonna be a little on the higher end. The one that I bought right here at Blade Show was $495, and then the AutoMac is a little bit cheaper, $458 on the AutoMac. But the reason that McNees may sound familiar to you if you are not familiar with the Mac2 and the AutoMac is this little knife right here, the McBee. This is the Spyderco McBee designed by Jonathan McNees. And what he does offer on his website, if you do have one of these, or if you don't and want one, he offers aftermarket scales. So you can buy this knife from Spyderco or Blade HQ or wherever you get it from. And he has a micarta scale, like this one right here. This is a natural micarta scale that would fit on there. And then this one, probably my favorite, and probably the one that I am going to stick with, a titanium frag milled pattern. Frag milled pattern. I said that right. It just didn't sound right. A titanium frag milled pattern scale as well. So the micarta scale, I believe, is about 40 bucks. Titanium, 80 to 120. I don't know exactly. I did not buy these. So Jonathan sent me the AutoMac and these two scales. I purchased the Mac2 3.5. Oh yeah, that is a McBee that I would actually really like to carry now. Micarta, all the things for starters, but that looks good. I think that looks really good. But I do kind of want to see what the frag pattern looks like. I take it back. I think this would be the one I would carry. I love my micarta, but that frag pattern just looks so good on this thing. Check out McNees because I think he's doing some really, really great stuff. Now, the one thing that you should know is that these come in drops. They are starting to make their way to dealers, so you can get them from dealers, but your most direct way is to get them directly from Jonathan McNees, but you have to be fast. You have to be very fast to get either one of these right now. But I'm pretty sure both the frag pattern and the micarta are in stock if you want to dress up your McBee. I think he's also got some scales for the Techno 2, maybe some other stuff, but the real thing here is going to be these the Macs, the AutoMac, the Mac2. They're just fantastic, and this was honestly almost as soon as I bought it, it made its way into my top 5. Period. Like, it would be very hard for me to choose between this and a couple of other knives that I own. This one honestly might even just be a toss-up between this and the Umnumzan. And you guys know I love the Umnumzan. I freaking love this thing a lot. So there you have it. McNees Knives. Really, seriously, check them out. So the first knife that this next company sent to me, I knew it wasn't my jam, right? Appearance-wise, it did nothing for me at all. But it had the fidget factor, it had a cool and different unique factor, and I don't know, I gave it a shot, and I kind of liked it. It still didn't do anything for me in terms of appearances or aesthetics, but what the company itself was doing spoke to me, and this is the Sandrin Knives Torino carbon fiber. I don't like carbon fiber, I'm not a fan of this blade shape, but everything else about this is just cool. So Sandrin's main thing is these tungsten carbide blades. You've probably seen them on Cedric and Ada, maybe Metal Complex. They've been kind of making the rounds. They've been around for a while, but in my personal opinion, they haven't made a knife that really spoke to a large audience. One cool thing that they do now use, and one thing that I liked about this, is that they have this recoil lock. This is the locking mechanism that was designed by Snex. It's very similar to the Dimco Shark Lock, but it is, in my understanding, a little bit different, but in terms of use and practice, it's very, very similar. You pull back on this little backspacer, the whole backspacer is part of this, and it's springy, it springs forward, and it locks when you open the knife, and to release, you pull back, and it kind of, that's also your detent. So, different locking mechanism, but very fidgety, very cool, works well. My only complaint with this one was that you kind of have to dig your fingernail into the end of it, and that's the only way to operate it. You can use your index, but the jimping is kind of weird. But yeah, this knife, the carbon fiber Torino, it's different, it's unique, but it's not for me. But recently they came out with this knife, which on paper is very, very similar to the Torino, except for it's titanium this time. I think they have a zirconium version, but it is much more aesthetically pleasing. It feels better in the hand. There's no choil, but it feels much stronger than this carbon fiber one. And it's not just the weight, it just feels more substantial. In the hand, what this really reminds me of, a little bit, just because of the blade thickness. I mean, it's very thin stock on this, and just the way that it's built and constructed, it feels a lot like this titanium Neutron. More than anything, it kind of makes me think of the tactile knife company Bear. and it's just how thin this thing is. Obviously this thing is bigger and thicker and heavier, and it's just bigger in all dimensions, but something about it makes me feel like this could be like a tactile knife company knife. It's obviously not, and it still has the tungsten carbide blade, and it still has this recoil lock, but I don't know, just something about it when I first got it in hand made me think of the Bear. That aside, this is what I think I've been waiting for from Sandrin Knives. Something that looks a little better, a little more traditional, a 3.38 inch tungsten carbide blade. Your overall length is 7.67 inches, and it's a little more substantial at 3.45 ounces. But man, it's everything that I wanted this one to be, and it also looks pretty good. However, if you were not a fan of the $300 price on the Torino, you're not gonna like the fact that the Monza Titanium is $400. I think if you're looking for something a little different, something that's gonna stay sharp for a very long time and looks good, this is probably your best bet. It's definitely the best looking knife that Sandrin has made by far, and it's very, very fidgety. It works well, super, super sharp and slicey. I like it. I'm a fan, and I really like what Sandrin's doing, but I think Sandrin's finally starting to put it together. It's difficult making these tungsten carbide blades, so they're finally putting it together and mixing this really cool technology with better designs and better locking mechanisms. Before, I'm pretty sure it was slip joints. I'm not a huge fan of slip joints. I mean, I have a Bear, but I prefer a locking blade. My biggest concern is sharpening. What happens when you dull this knife? Do you want to have to send it in for a resharpening all the time, and then you have to go to a chisel grind if that's not what you really want? You really want to go chisel grind? I personally don't, but that, or you're gonna have to learn how to sharpen it yourself or buy a reblade. So you do run yourself into a corner a little bit, but man, I just think it's a really cool concept. Now, one of the questions you may have, since these are 71 HRC, how easy is it to snap the blade? I don't know personally. Sandrin says they are actually quite tough and don't snap that easily. But again, if you do, you have that option of a total reblade, so you're kind of squared away there as well. So I think it's cool, personally. The Torino, again, not really my style, but the Monza, I think, is Sandrin finally doing something that I think will catch the attention of more people. And if they keep going down this path, I think they're gonna do some really cool stuff. So back from the Blade Show haul video, company I talked about was ANV Knives, or Acta non-Verba. They are out of the Czech Republic. And again, I think they're doing some cool stuff. Very simple, sleek, elegant designs. They're understated, they are not over the top in any way, and they are providing great value. They're making good knives for great prices. This one, for example, the A100, I'm pretty sure, not this version because it's Magna Cut and I don't know what the pricing on this, but I'm pretty sure this knife would normally go for around $130 to $150. It's kind of tough to know exactly where that is because they're not in stock with US dealers right now, or at least they weren't when I looked at it last. And if you do the conversions from their currency to US, you get something that I don't think is totally accurate. There's VAT to include, and then conversion rates are changing all the time. So I don't know 100% on pricing on these, but I know approximately that this one is gonna be like around $130 to $150. But again, this is the Magna Cut version, and typically this comes in Sleipner steel. I don't know the difference between the A100 and the A200 either. They are very, very similar knives, but in that Blade Show haul video, one thing I noted is that I didn't like this one-sided stud. The A200 has a double-sided stud. But all of that aside, what we have here is an axis lock, effectively, on a knife that is very, very lightweight. These are GRN handles, and as you can see, you can bend these scales a little bit. So if the bug out wasn't exactly your jam, you're gonna have probably the same complaints with the A100 and A200 because it is ultra, ultra lightweight. But I think that this, coming from a company out of the Czech Republic and coming at a decent price of like $130-ish, $150, is really good. And the one thing that they do on all of their folders that sets them apart is they all have glow on them somewhere. So in this one, it's a Superluminova glow stud, I guess, inside the thumb stud. On this one, you have this pass-through Superluminova on the flipper tab. And this is just so if you do drop your knife at night, you can still find it. And this one here is the Z300. This one is in Sleipner steel, and it is a flipper titanium frame lock on not phosphor bronze washers, not bearings. It's actually on nylon washers, which some people don't like, but I have no problem with nylon washers whatsoever. I will say that the Z300, this is the one that I purchased personally. They gave me the A100 and the other two knives we're gonna talk about. This one has a pretty weak detent. I tried to tune it a little bit, but it does have a weak detent. The blade comes out very easily and it doesn't always fully deploy. If you try and don't just mess around with it, it will always deploy, but it is possible to kind of fail the deployment. It does come out a little sloppy sometimes because the detent is so light. And I have tried to adjust that, made very well otherwise, and I do feel that that is just maybe a bit of a QC thing, or it could be an issue with the knife, I don't know. This one being a titanium frame lock is gonna be a little bit more expensive than the ultralight A100, the Z300. This one I know is $240, that's what they told me on the floor. I ended up paying a show price of $200 for it. And I think for $200, this thing is exceptional. I love the blade shape, I love the size, I like everything about this thing aesthetically. And that's what I think ANV excels at. They really have design down. We have some fixed blades from them here. They don't just do everyday carry stuff. They actually make knives for the Czech army. And this is, or Czech armed forces, not just the army. So this knife, the M311 Spelter, was designed in collaboration with the Czech forward air observation units. But they have a knife, I don't remember the model number, but it is, I'm gonna call it the tank knife. And it was designed, it's beautiful, but it was designed after the T-72 tank. The overall length of the knife is the same size as the round the T-72 shoots. I believe it's 112, 120 millimeters. I can't remember exactly. The belly, or the blade shape, the belly is the same radius as the underside of the tank. The handguard is the same shape as the turret, and then there's a pommel on the end, which is actually a rod from the tank. They source these rods from T-72 tanks and use them as the pommel or stud on the end of the knife. Everything about that is just really cool to me. It's not like they're forcing stuff. They're not doing anything that's gaudy. It's just beautiful design, and it translates to very, very useful knives. Like this knife, I said in that Blade Show haul video, this is one of the most comfortable fixed blades I've ever put in my hands. There is no way that you can hold this where there are any hot spots. It just melts into your hands every way you hold it, and it's a monster of a knife. I mean, this thing is huge. Probably more knife than I would ever really need, even, you know, out in the bush. It's a monster of a knife, and it's built insanely well, but it's more importantly designed to be, it's perfectly designed. That's where ANV absolutely excels, is design. Obviously not exactly EDC oriented in any way, but still a very, very cool knife, and it comes with this giant sheath. But more EDC oriented in the fixed blade category is this one right here. And this is their Kiradashi scalpel. This is the MO50 in LMAX steel, and it is just a short little scalpel blade, great for opening boxes and cutting rope, whatever you need to do. This is not something I would carry. I'll be totally frank with you. I'm more of a folder, not a scalpel Kiradashi kind of guy, but this is still cool. I can still appreciate this. One of the O-rings has broken. Two of them, actually. There were two. Now they're missing. But you've got bit storage in the handle, and then you have a hex driver in the tail end right there, and this little Kydex sheath that snaps into, great retention. I think it's cool, but it's not something that I would carry myself. And speaking of design, we have the last company on this list. This is Arcane Design, and we have two new models. One is a prototype that is launching, a pre-order is launching on June 30th, so in just a few days. And then we have this one, which has been out for just a little bit now. Pre-orders shipped out, and now they're available on the site, or at least they were when I last checked. So I talked to Israel at Blade Show 2021, and I told him that I really liked what he was doing. He was just kind of stepping out, breaking the mold, and designing stuff that was different in a good way. It's very futuristic. He pairs the knives with like this lore and art. It's all very like space adventure-y, very angular, futuristic stuff. But the other two designs that he released were not my style whatsoever. I didn't like the blade shape. I didn't necessarily like the knives, but I liked the direction he was going. And then I saw this one. So this would be his most recent release. This is the Arcane Design Abyss. And instead of like this really super angular Wharncliffe blade, we're getting a Bowie, this really nice upswept tip, and then a compound grind. So you have a flat grind up here and a hollow down here. You have several methods of deployment, right? You've got this recessed thumb groove or finger groove, but then you also have a flipper tab. So multiple ways to open this knife, which I always appreciate. Frame lock, titanium, it's on bearings. You've got a lock bar insert and M390 blade steel. This one is a right hand tip up only carry, but I really love the design of this. His design just sticks out. You know it's an Arcane design as soon as you see it. And then he has these swappable pivot collars, I guess we'll call them. They feel like a little more than just a collar, but you can swap those if you want to mix it up and change the colors and stuff. This thing is snappy, very, very snappy, and I think this thing just looks great. And this is really the first Arcane that I would personally buy myself. But then he had to break out another prototype on me, and we get to the Preytheon. These are going up for pre-order on the 30th of this month, and just look at that. That right there, that is a fantastic looking knife. I said it in my last video, I would love to see this in like a stonewashed titanium with like a micarta insert. I think that would look sick. But these are coming out in a bunch of different configurations. You can check them all out on his website, but this is the Jade G10 with the black G10 insert with a black finished blade. These are coming in many different blade options. So there's an S35. So this one would be S35 with a G10 handle. There's a titanium version that's also still going to be a liner lock, not a frame lock, a liner lock. That will be a 20 CV blade. And then there will be a Damn steel, which has titanium handles as well. This one, unlike the Abyss, the Preytheon has a reversible clip for ambidextrous carry, and you also have a front flipper opener on this one. So you can front flip it, you got thumb studs, and you've got a finger groove. So many, many different ways to open this one as well. He said on his website, this was designed to kind of fill the gap for the perfect blade, the perfect EDC knife, and it's damn near close. This thing is really sick. I've also said that it kind of makes me think a little bit of a Rockeye or an SBR because it's got this really aggressive jimping and a little bit of a thumb ramp and a dip and the blade shape. It gives me some SBR vibes, or like Les George vibes, but it's definitely got its own design and it's pretty sick. So because there are different versions of this, there will be different prices. The G10 version is going to be $190. The titanium with 20 CV is going to be $350, and then the Damn steel and titanium will be $640, and then the Abyss is going to be $375. Obviously, like I said, many configurations in both of these knives, but Arcane Design he's got his own thing going, and I freaking love it. So there you have it. There are 5 knife brands I think should be on your radar when you're looking for a new knife. We've got Sandrin Knives, JHO Knives, ANV or Acta Verba, Arcane Design, and McNees. They're all doing cool, interesting stuff. I have to say, I mean, this is probably no surprise to any of you. My favorite knife that I talked about today has got to be the PM Mac2. It's just tooly. It's just a tank, and I freaking love this thing. So I don't know why I'm telling you that, but don't sleep on McNees. These things, I saw them and I thought they looked pretty cool, but it was not until I got this thing in my hands that I was like, this is it. This is one of the knives for me that I would have to have stay in the collection. I freaking love it. So don't sleep on any of these knife brands, honestly, but there you have it. 5 knife brands you should know. I'm gonna be doing another one of these very, very soon. So let me know in the comments down below what other knife brands I should be looking at. But also, if you want to support what I'm doing here on the channel, hit the links in the description. Many of those are affiliate links. Most of the ones from these companies are not, but that does help support what I'm doing here at the channel. You can also go to patreon.com/bestdamnedc to support there. But that's it for now. I'll see you guys in the next video. And until then, carry on.